Ms. Ocasio-Cortez is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Sloan, earlier today you said that Wells Fargo does not put profits over people, correct?
That's correct.
I'm interested in the human rights abuses and environmental disasters that some say are financed by your bank, Wells Fargo. In a recent Guardian article by Crystal Tubals and Matt Remley, they stated, Wells Fargo has pursued profits without principles by investing in private prisons, for-profit immigration detention centers, loan shark-like payday lending, and holding much of the bond debt, strangling Puerto Rico's efforts to lift itself out of its financial crisis. Is it true that Wells Fargo has invested or financed in some of these industries?
We made a decision 2 years ago to exit the 2 relationships that we had with 2 private prison firms. One has been exited, and then when the credit agreement with the other one amortizes and matures, we will no longer have that relationship.
Are those 2 companies Geo Group and CoreCivic?
Correct.
And which one has been exited, Geo Group or CoreCivic?
I can't recall exactly which one. But,
okay.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I'd like to seek unanimous consent to submit 3 reports highlighting the bank's role in debt financing these groups, the for-profit prison companies running ICE detention facilities.
Without objection, such is the order.
Mr. Sloan, why was the bank involved in the caging of children and financing the caging of children to begin with?
I don't know how to answer that question because we weren't.
So in finance, you were financing and involved in debt financing of CoreCivic and Geo Group, correct?
For a period of time, we were involved in financing one of the firms. We're not anymore, and the other. I'm not familiar with the specific assertion that you're making, but we weren't directly involved in that.
Okay, so these companies run private detention facilities run by ICE, which is involved in caging children. But I'll move on. Mr. Sloan, Wells Fargo was also an investor, a major investor in the Dakota Access Pipeline and the Keystone XL pipelines. They were prime investors and lenders to companies building these pipelines in defiance of Standing Rock Sioux's treaty rights to protect its water and sacred lands. They warned early on, the Lakota Sioux warned early on that the pipeline was unstable and bound to leak. Despite that, it was built anyway, and it has leaked at least 5 times. And the Keystone XL in particular had one leak that leaked 210,000 gallons across South Dakota. Since Wells Fargo financed the building of this pipeline in an environmentally unstable way, why shouldn't the bank be held responsible for financing the cleanup of the disasters from these projects?
Which pipeline are you referring to?
Either.
So we were not involved in the financing of the XL pipeline. We were one of the 17 or 19 banks that was involved in the financing of the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Okay, so Wells Fargo hasn't financed any company associated with the Keystone XL pipeline?
No, I didn't say that. I said we're not involved in financing that pipeline specifically.
Okay, so let's focus on the Dakota Access Pipeline. Should Wells Fargo be held responsible for the damages incurred by climate change due to the financing of fossil fuels and these projects?
I don't know how you'd calculate that, Congresswoman.
Say from spills, or when we have to reinvest in infrastructure, building seawalls from the erosion of infrastructure, or cleanups, wildfires, etc.
Related to that pipeline, I'm not aware that there's been any of what you described that's occurred related to that pipeline.
How about the cleanups from the leaks of the Dakota Access Pipeline?
I'm not aware of the leaks associated with the Dakota Access Pipeline that you're describing.
So hypothetically, if there was a leak from the Dakota Access Pipeline, why shouldn't Wells Fargo pay for the cleanup of it, since it paid for the construction of the pipeline itself?
Because we don't operate the pipeline. We provide financing to the company that's operating pipeline. Our responsibility is to ensure that at the time that we make that loan, that customer, and we have a group of people in Wells Fargo, including an environmental oversight group headed by one of my colleagues who used to be at the EPA.
So one question, why did Wells Fargo finance this pipeline when it was widely seen to be environmentally unstable?
Again, the reason that we were one of the 17 or 19 banks that financed that is because our team reviewed the environmental impact, and we concluded that it was a risk that we were willing to take.
Thank you.
Today, Mr. Ledger, the day after the T-Mobile Sprint merger was announced, 9 top T-Mobile execs checked into Trump Hotel. Is that correct?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. We announced our deal on April 29th, and on April 30th, we came to Washington, D.C. as a leadership team for 2 things. One is to meet the FCC and the DOJ. The second is to announce our quarterly earnings. Well, that was the reason for a large group.
I understand there was a purpose in coming, but the very next day, 9 top execs checked into the Trump Hotel after the announcement, correct?
Yes, sir. And very importantly, if I may add, I made the decision. I'm a long-time Trump Hotel stayer, way before this transaction. For example, for 10 years I've stayed.
Okay. But the company had not paid for more than 2 nights at Trump Hotel prior to the announcement, correct?
Sir, the Trump Hotel was only in existence for about a year, and frankly, we had no reason to be here.
The bottom line, though, is that, only 2 nights had been paid for by T-Mobile prior to the announcement, correct?
At the Trump D.C., but not counting
Trump D.C.
tons of other hotels.
Trump D.C. Hotel. But now let me, because I'm running out of time now. And since the announcement, $195,000 has been spent by T-Mobile at Trump Hotel, Washington. Is that true? Yes or no?
That number is approximately true, and it's also 10% of our spend in Washington, D.C.
Okay, and I understand. But
including
now,
50%
prior, do you see how that looks? In other words, you don't spend any money at Trump Hotel 2 nights, and then after the merger, you spend $195,000 at Trump Hotel.
Sir, that's not on that night, and I would say.
Well, no, I'm saying over the last 11 months, you've spent $195,000. Do you understand the optics of that, what it looks like? It looks like what's happening is that T-Mobile is trying to curry favor with the White House. Did it occur to you that members of the public, members of Congress, the FCC, and President Trump himself, did it occur that we would all see that expenditure as an attempt by T-Mobile to gain acceptance by Donald Trump and his administration?
Congressman, I was and I am 100% sure that this deal will be judged by the FCC and the DOJ.
But I'm just talking about the optics of what happened.
The optics of me staying at the Trump Hotel haven't changed for 10 years.
Well, so, I appreciate that. It kind of doesn't pass the smell test with the American public. It looks like you're trying to purchase influence. It looks like could be a violation of the Emoluments Clause of the United States Constitution. Let me ask you this question. Do you know if the Trump organization or the Trump campaign or the Trump administration has attempted to contact the Justice Department to talk about this merger?
Sir, I have no information of that at all. Do
you know, has T-Mobile had any discussions with the Trump organization or the Trump campaign or the Trump administration about approving this merger?
I have not, and I'm not aware of any discussions by my organization.
My time has expired.
Senator Harris.
Thank you. Admiral Rogers, in response to the question from Senator Manchin, you, it appears, felt free to discuss the conversations you've had with the President in January about Russian active measures. Can you share with this committee how you're determining which conversations you can share and which you don't feel free to share?
Ma'am, the fact that we briefed the President previously, both went up to New York, and previously is a matter of public record.
So if it's a matter of public record, then you feel free to discuss those conversations?
If it's not classified, you can keep trying to trip me up. Senator, if you could I get to respond, please, ma'am?
No, sir. No.
Okay.
Are you saying that if it is classified, you will not discuss it? And then my follow-up question obviously would be, do you believe that discussion of Russian active measures is not the subject of classified information?
I stand by my previous